What's up, guys? Today we're going to be doing something that I had not seen documented in the Z31 groups before, and that is going to be adapting a CD009 transmission to the Z31 VG30. I think the reason the swap hasn't been done before is because it's pretty unconventional, and there's, I don't think, any bolt-on kits for it, so if there is one done, it's been pretty custom. But if you guys don't know the background, the reason I'm doing this swap is because my Z32 transmission right here is making some really weird sounds, and I'm not a transmission expert, and I have not been able to find anybody who can actually work on it for me. So, in lieu of trying to get it fixed, I'm just going to go ahead and swap in a different transmission and go from there. So, let's go ahead and talk about Z32 transmissions real quick, and the CD009 transmission. So this one right here is the Z32 transmission. The rear casing here is a stock Z32 casing, and then the front here is from I think it's an 89 Pathfinder. And basically the reason that I swapped on this front bell housing is because of this little dude right here, and this is the starter cutout. So if you notice next to it I have a Z32, well, it's an automatic transmission bell housing, but if it was a manual transmission it'd just have like a little window for the clutch fork. So you can see the starter is a little bit different on the Z32 because it engages from the opposite direction. So the Z31 goes that way and the Z32 comes from the back forward. So it's a little bit different. Now, you can go ahead and keep the Z32 front bell housing, but you need to make some modifications to like the flywheel and stuff like that. So swapping over this casing is actually really easy because it just bolts up. So it's pretty nice. But in my case, I kind of ran into issues with that in the sense that I think the Pathfinder transmission bell housing, I think it was worn out or something, or I'm missing a shim because that specific setup of gears in there and all the shims that I have, something just isn't working right. So it is very unfortunate that I can't get it to work, but that's okay because we have a CD009 transmission. Now, I don't know tons about CD009 transmissions, but I believe there are 3 versions of them, and the way you tell, if I can get a good picture of it, somewhere on here. Alright, I don't know if you guys can see it right there. See how it says CD0 or CD0 number 1? There's 3 different types of them, and this is the earliest version. You can also tell that this one has a window in the bottom corner right there for the clutch fork. The later versions had concentric slave cylinders, which is what we're going to actually be moving to for this. So, in order to complete this swap, because this has been done into a Z32 very often, so you can get kits that will adapt to the Z32, and then we can go ahead and further adapt it to the Z31. So, what we need for this kit is a couple things. This right here is the Jim Wolf Technology adapter kit. You can see it looks like that right there. And basically this is a front plate that is going to swap onto that front plate right there, and then it's going to go ahead and allow us to adapt this bolt pattern along here to the bolt pattern inside of this automatic transmission bell housing. And then in the inside here, what we're going to go ahead and bolt on is the concentric slave cylinder. That's going to let us go ahead and release the clutch properly. This has all the hardware and everything that we need for this kit. It's very nice. I appreciate it a lot. And it's going to go ahead and hopefully make this a very strong setup. These are routinely used over 600 horsepower. They're very strong transmissions. And I'm looking at a clutch that can hold about 600 as well. And so all this together, we should be able to make 600 on a stock unopened block through a CD009 transmission. And then we're gonna have to look at the rear differential. I've got some information that those might be a little weak on the NA cars, which is what mine originally was. So we might have to swap that out. We will see down the line though. For today, we're gonna go ahead and adapt this bad boy. So what we have to do is cut off this part of the bell housing. I'm gonna go ahead and cut in front of this rib right here all the way around, and then take this front part off. I haven't cleaned it because it's just pretty gross, but if we don't have to reuse any of that, I'd rather just cut it off. So we're gonna cut it off, and then we'll go ahead and remove this front plate and then bolt on the JWT plate and go from there. So it should be pretty simple, should be pretty straightforward. This is probably going to be a 2-part swap video series kind of, because I don't have everything set up yet. The way that this transmission shifter bolted on is different than that one. The way that it bolted to the car is different, so I'm going to go ahead and have to do a secondary version, or a secondary video of this, of bolting it into the car and all the stuff that goes along with that I don't have ready today because I just don't have it in the car. So that'll come along down the line. Today we're just gonna go ahead and get the transmission itself ready to swap over. It should be fairly simple, should be fairly straightforward, but let's go ahead and see. So I've got a grinder right here, got some extra batteries, and we're gonna see how long it takes us to get all the way around this transmission. All right, guys, we're making some pretty good progress. One thing I wanted to note is I was originally using this diamond-tipped metal cutting blade here, and I was noticing, I kind of chipped a lot of it off, but there was a lot of aluminum that was getting stuck along the edges, if you can see right there. The aluminum just kind of likes to grab onto things like this, and it kind of just melts almost instead of being torn off. So this blade is not really a good one to use. I went to Home Depot and I got some of these. These are just standard cutoff discs, and these things I legitimately they're like 10 times faster. They just don't get the aluminum stuck on them. They do disintegrate. You have to buy packs. They're like a disposable pretty much. But these guys are so much better. So I'm always, a fan of having the right tool for the job. And in this case, this was like a $30 pack of 15 discs. And I'm not even gonna use one for this. So definitely get the right tool for this. Let's go ahead and jump over here and look at how it's going. So you can see there's, well, I don't know if you can see any light through there, but I have a nice cut through a good like 2/3 of this. So I started down there. It comes up and around over to the side. I'm getting closer. Let me see if I can pan you guys here. So I'm getting closer to that. This is the bottom of the transmission right here. And I really don't want to end up cutting into that. So I'm going to be very careful as I go through this section here. But going back around that side there should be fine. So yeah, if you're going to be doing this, just follow this second rib right here. Just cut on the inside of it and you should be good. It's looking like we will clear everything. So basically when this kit goes on and replaces that front piece and then this bolts here, it is smaller than the original one, so it kind of fits inside almost like this. And as long as you have enough lip cuts out of it, it can overlap a little bit. As long as it doesn't touch, we'll be fine. So, and we're gonna have to modify this guy anyways to use it, so I'm not too worried. But yeah, so this is coming along really, really good. Super happy with how it's coming out. That new blade definitely made a big difference, so definitely do that. I probably should have covered this guy so it didn't get metal shavings all in it. I will do that right now just because I'm gonna wipe it down and then put a little bit of stuff on it, just so that we don't get any metal shavings in there. We'll clean it when we pull off that front cover anyways, but regardless, we still wanna make sure it's nice and good. These guys right here, these big ribs, they are deeper than the rest by a substantial amount, so you kinda have to make a point of cutting down deep enough in those areas to get through them. So, like this one right here, you actually might be able to see, I didn't cut that guy all the way, I cut these other two, but this guy's not, so I'm gonna have to go ahead and pass right by that again. But yeah, super easy, honestly a lot easier than I thought it was gonna be. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm letting my battery charge right now. I got about this much off of 1.5 batteries. So we're gonna go ahead and give it some chance to charge, and then we'll finish off cutting the rest of this bell housing. All right guys, as you can see, we got the front cut off. There's a nice lip around here where we went ahead and just followed that rib. Here is what the blade looks like. So it is a bit chewed up, a bit less than we started with. So these are definitely disposable, but that's okay. We don't need it anymore, really. So this is looking really, really cool. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and probably use an air compressor and a little bit of water and like some Dawn dish detergent to try to go ahead and clean all this up. There's just a lot of dust and brake dust in there, or clutch dust technically, and probably oil from the last car this was in. So we want to go ahead and clean it up really well before we pop this front cover off so we don't accidentally mess anything up. But let's go ahead and just kind of set this near it real quick. It's gonna look kind of like that when it's done, and it's gonna fully bolt up to our VG. This will be really, really cool. Super excited for this. Looks really neat. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up, and then we'll go ahead and throw on the front cover of the JWT transmission adapter. So looks really good, and let's see how that turns out. All right guys, I wanted to capture this real quick before I forget it, because I probably will, but basically we have to go ahead and modify the shift linkage real quick. So if you know what we did on the Z32 transmission, it had the same thing, and we adapted this using I don't remember which kit we used in order to shorten it up here, but this is a aftermarket piece, and basically you cut off the extension rod and then bolt this onto that little the swivel right here. So we did the same thing over here. You can see well, maybe you can see, come over this way, I cut along it right here, just one side, and now you can just kind of grab it and pull one side off. And then that leaf is still probably hot, so I'm not going to take it off. But what we're going to go ahead and do is, you can see that it's just the little swivel bearing in there. We're going to go ahead and grab that piece off that transmission. It should fit on here. So I'm going to go ahead and put up on the screen whatever kit I used for this. But that should allow us to adapt the transmission shifter to be shorter. Let me go ahead and grab, this is what the old kit looked like right here. So this bolted onto the top like that, right there. And then that moved the shift point to right there. We're gonna go ahead and fabricate one of our own, similar to this, but it's gonna go ahead and adapt to this guy. We're gonna go ahead and use these points up here, but we're also going to be using, let's see if you can see, there's a point down here as well. That's gonna be able to triangulate this really, really nicely. It should be a super strong bracket. I will go ahead and offer these for sale probably once I get them made and finalized, because this is gonna be a pretty custom piece, and you kind of want a really nice stiff piece. So keep an eye out for that. I'll go ahead and start mocking that up. I've got to go ahead and make the prototype since this is the first I have the transmission, but that will be pretty cool. I just didn't want to go ahead and forget this little step right here of making the shifter actually fit. So that'll be in the future when we actually make the custom one, but let's go ahead and jump over to the front. Alright guys, so I went ahead and cleaned up the front a little bit, and then I ordered some parts for this. So let's go ahead and take a look at these real quick. So this is the concentric slave cylinder that goes inside of the clutch. This goes on top of, I think, that piece right here in the center. And I think it probably bolts something like that. Actually, I think that's the bottom, so it probably bolts somewhere around here. This being the top that way. And then what we need is this piece right here. And this goes into this guy, basically. It plugs in right there, or it probably goes like this. And what this piece is, I'll give you the part number real quick. Here is the part number if you're curious. This is the bleeder and the fill port for this. So basically you have, right here is the pressure in, and then right here is a bleed nozzle, because you can't bleed this if it's inside the bell housing. So this kind of relocates that outwards, kind of like that. So we will figure out which orientation this is best to make sure that the bleed port is upwards. But I went ahead and ordered that one. It was actually cheapest to get it shipped in from the United Arab Emirates, which was pretty funny. And then I just got that guy in Rock Auto. So I'm gonna go ahead, we're gonna crack off all of these bolts now around the outside here, take off this front cover, and then we should be able to install the Jim Wolf cover. I'm gonna go ahead and read the instructions, figure out what torque specs to go to. I just got a new nice digital torque wrench, so that is working pretty nicely. I've used it once before, and it's pretty simple to use. I'll go ahead and give you guys a quick tutorial when we hit that point. So I'm gonna go ahead, pop that off real quick, and see how much transmission fluid we get leaked all over. Alright guys, so I got all the bolts out of it. These are all 12 mils. And now we're gonna go ahead and pop this front cover off. What I have done in the past is smack right here on the end of this. And what that ended up actually doing is breaking like this part right here across it, and so the collar actually came off. So I don't recommend ever touching that. So you can see there's some tabs like this guy right here that kind of jut off all the way around. And you should be able to get like a flat blade or a pry bar or something and just kind of pop up from those areas evenly all the way around. Looks like I missed a bolt right there. But don't ever hit on this guy unless you want to destroy the shaft pretty much. So pop off all those guys, and then the bottom ones you'll notice had a little bit of Loctite on them. We're gonna have to put more Loctite on when we go to reinstall this, so make sure you have some Loctite on hand. And the instructions do in fact say that, so as long as you read the instructions for the kit, you should be good to go. Alright guys, as you can see, we got the front cover off. Now we're going to go ahead and move our attention to the JWT adapter plate. Scroll over here. And in the kit comes a brand new transmission input seal. We're going to go ahead and we're going to get lube on the outside here, and then press this into the back right here. You might be able to see there's kind of like a little groove in the back, and then it's kind of flat on front. You might be able to see that. The flat part goes forward, so lube on the inside here. I'm just going to be using a tiny little bit of this red and tacky grease. You could probably use some transmission oil if you have some, just something to make sure it doesn't bind. And then the only socket I have is a 1-inch socket, which is a little bit too small for this. I wish I had something a little bit bigger, So make sure you have something to press this in with. And then we're just gonna press this in really gently, make sure not to damage it. All right, as you can see, we got the seal pressed in. Now we're gonna go ahead and get a bit more grease and lube up the inner lip here. Kind of lift it off the box so I can get a bit more purchase on it here. We just want this to be a nice, clean seal that won't damage anything as it rotates. There we go. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and take this and put it onto the transmission. The part right here is downwards, so that's on the bottom. All right, guys, so I want to test fit this, and if you can see right here at the bottom, I kind of have a little lip left, and I was like, oh, that's pretty close. Looking at this guy, there's quite a good amount of material right here, and then going ahead and setting it up against this whole face here, it's pretty oversized in most areas. So I think I'm gonna have to go ahead and cut off another ring of this back behind the mating face. So not the worst thing in the world, but definitely something just to do right the first time. So you're gonna wanna cut this just, I guess, as far back. You'll see once I'm done here where I cut it, but just be wary of that. You could also, you know, shave this down if you really wanted to kind of trim it up a little bit. But I think cutting this like half-inch plate of aluminum is gonna be a lot slower of a process than cutting this pretty thin aluminum here. So I'm gonna put the gasket, the old gasket and the old cover back on so I can cut this without getting metal shavings everywhere. And then we'll go ahead and take that back off again and then put the new stuff on. So give me a second, I'll cut all this again and then we'll see how it goes. All right, guys, here is the rest of the ring that I cut off. So we can come over to here and you can see there's kind of just a slope around all of these pieces here. So we have plenty of clearance to this front plate. I mean, we're a bit close right there, but that's okay. The closest places were up on top here and then on the bottom. Those were pretty close. This piece right here was particularly difficult to get because it was a sloped surface. It was pretty much flat. And I didn't want to take this guy off because I don't have anything to cap it with. So I didn't want any metal shavings getting in that vent port. So I kind of just made a line pretty much where I wanted it to cut. And then I was actually just able to snap it off. It's pretty brittle stuff. So any of these, if you don't get quite through them all the way, you should be able to just snap them. Ideally, that's not the best way because you don't want to accidentally crack inwards and then compromise the structural integrity of any of the rest of the case. But giving it a path, it helps it follow that. So I think we're pretty good. As you can see, it's looking pretty good. Right here was also a tough spot because of these dudes kind of in the way, but we should be good to go. I went ahead and blowed it off with a, I don't know if blowed's the right word, with a air compressor, and so it's looking a lot better than it was. There's still metal shavings on it, but it should be fine to take the plate off and then just replace it. So I'm gonna go ahead, and now we can finally put on the JWT adapter plate. Alright guys, so I've got the plate just kind of sitting on here. What I went ahead and did is threw two of the old bolts through here so I could line up the gasket. It is very difficult to get to the gasket with this plate that is overhanging by so much on all the sides. You just can't really hold it like you could with the stock plate, but that's okay. What we're gonna go ahead and do now is use the supplied 10mm, or these are M8, sorry, bolts that came with the kit. There's 10 of them, and we're gonna go ahead and use some high strength Loctite. This is Loctite Red. It's in a red bottle, and it is also red itself. Make sure you get high strength Loctite. Sometimes they put it in a blue bottle. It doesn't make sense. You just want the non-removable kind. So we're gonna go ahead and grab this, put on every single one of these bolts, put it through here, and then we will torque them down. Alright guys, so we got this plate on. I got all the bolts in with the Loctite. We're gonna go ahead and torque them down now. I went ahead and bought this digital type torque wrench recently. This is the cheapest price I could find on Amazon for a reputable brand. So this is an AC Delco, if you can see that. And it was about $100, I think a little bit more. And I wanted a digital type just because these don't go out of spec nearly as easy as the others. If you guys don't know, if you have a click type torque wrench, you want to de-torque them when you're done using them. Otherwise the spring in them will actually compact and then be out of spec. So I got this one. It's worked pretty well for me. It's pretty simple, a little bit confusing to use sometimes, but the power button obviously turns it on. And then this button right here is where you're gonna set it to, or the units. So you hold it down, we're at 22 foot-pounds. If you push it again, it'll scroll through. This is kilogram, centimeter, Newton meter, inch, pound, and then back to foot-pounds. you can go up and down if you want to change it, and then you're gonna hold it down or just leave it and it'll go back to the main screen here. Now, once you're here, you can use the up and down to go between this, I don't know if you can see it, P or T, oh, wrong button, P or T. P is, it shows you what you're doing while you're doing it, and then T is, it just tells you when you get to that point or something like that. I leave it on P, shows me what it is. So if we go ahead and stick it in here, and we'll start to torque this down. So once it screams at you, you know, okay, you hit 24 foot-pounds. So that's pretty good. I'm gonna go ahead and do all of these. I'm gonna go ahead and put a torque stripe, just a little Sharpie mark on all of these so I know which ones that I did, so I know I did them all. But this is the AC Delco torque wrench. I'll put the part number for this down in the description in case you're curious and you want one. I won't put a link because I'm not going to monetize it or anything, guys. Don't worry about that. But if you want one, this is the one that I have. It's worked, you know, pretty well for, I did a brake job with it, and it worked really well for that. So if you guys are curious to get one, this one's doing good so far. But I'm gonna go ahead and torque this down, and then we can finally put on the new automatic transmission belt housing. All right, so I got all of those in and torqued down. Doing pretty good. Those are a T40 in case you're curious. Now we're gonna go ahead and put in these studs that hold on the bell housing. And these ones are a 5mm hex. We're gonna go ahead and put red Loctite on these as well, and then install them in this outside circle right here. These get torqued down to 10 foot-pounds. My torque wrench doesn't actually go that low, so I'm just gonna kind of guesstimate because I don't have my other torque wrench with me right now that does go lower. So 10 foot-pounds, 22 foot-pounds, and then we should be good. So red Loctite on everything. Yeah, let's do it. All right, guys, got all of them put in and torqued down. We're gonna go ahead and put the bell housing on now, the moment of truth. Now this should fit. I kind of gently test fit it before, but we're gonna go ahead and put it on for its final quote unquote time. And I did notice that it was pretty tight around the inside, which is fine. It's kind of exactly what we want. And there we go. It fits really, really nicely. So let's go ahead and take a look at this real quick. So you can see, maybe you can't, all the studs come through and they have the same amount of clearance on the outside, which is really, really good. So this is gonna go ahead and adapt to our VG30 engine. So this is really, really cool. The only thing left is to put on the supplied nuts right here, and then this piece here that is for the throwout bearing. But we're gonna go ahead and get the nuts next. Those getting red Loctite, of course, and then torqued down to 50 foot-pounds, 50. And like I said, guys, there's an instruction manual for this, like it comes with the kit, so you don't have to just follow me on what I'm doing. Go ahead and read for yourself. But this is looking really, really good. I'm super excited. It finally looks like a real transmission again, instead of just a weird thing with a cut-off front end. So I'm gonna go ahead, get this all together, and then we will look at how it turned out. All right, guys, so I got everything here torqued down. It's looking really good. I put the slave cylinder in just to kind of understand how things are gonna start working. And if you remember, this is the piece that goes up for the bleeder and for the clutch line. And I'm thinking it's gonna go like this, because that puts the bleeder valve here at the top. So if it goes like that, we're gonna need to cut a hole in the top of the bell housing over here somewhere. So I have to figure that out still. There is the option of turning it upside down. I believe you could turn it upside down. It actually might go one way. I think this might be keyed. But regardless, if it was upside down, the bleeder might be in the wrong spots to get all the air bubbles out. So I think we're gonna go this way. We're gonna figure out the best way to do it. That'll probably be in the next video once I try to go ahead and get this in the car. Just because I want to go ahead and publish this because I think it's pretty cool. But yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. It really is, for the most part, a bolt-on affair. Granted, you have to cut the bell housing off with a cutoff wheel, but that's really not too bad if you know what you're doing. Getting the right pieces. I will go ahead and make a write-up on my website once I get all of this in to figure out what the cost of this is, because the question is always, is this a better alternative than, say, a Z3230A or another 30A in your area? And the Z32, a brand new one, runs you about $2,100. So it's pretty expensive. You can get used ones if there are used ones in your area. I remember when I bought mine, people were like, well, why didn't you get just a used one? And well, they weren't available with me in my area. The closest ones, I'm in New Mexico, and the closest ones were like the middle of Texas, which is like a 12-hour drive there and then a 12-hour drive back. So I wasn't really too keen on doing that, and a brand new one sounded pretty nice to me, although it's having obvious issues. So this is going to be a pretty cool one. I think it's going to come in decently cheap for the amount of power that this transmission can hold, for the availability of this transmission. I think this will be pretty cool. So guys, if you have any questions or comments, definitely drop them down below. Like I said, in the next video, we'll go ahead and modify this part of the bell housing here for the starter. I think it's probably just going to be cutting right here and calling it a day. But we will go ahead and check when we get this in the engine, put it all together and make sure all the bolt holes are still where it needs to be. Just looking right now, I think we might actually need to make a bracket that goes right here, but we'll see how it goes. Like I said, guys, drop a comment down below if you have any questions, and hopefully this was just as cool for you as it was for me. So I will see you guys next time, and I hope you have a great week.